Digital wellness is an increasingly important part of the psychiatrist's role, helping people navigate the world of social media in a healthy way. To better understand what this looks like and how to navigate all the information that's out there on this topic, I'm absolutely delighted now to be joined by Dr. Howard Liu. Howard, welcome.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks ever so much indeed for joining us today. Now, what is the concept of digital wellness and how do we get to the point where we're at today?
Well, I think digital wellness is about being mindful about the way we use technology, and particularly smartphones and social media, to make sure that it's really benefiting to our health and our overall well-being, and not just something we stick in there in place of real-world activities.
So does everybody meet these challenges equally, or are there some parts of the community more vulnerable?
Well, I think many of us struggle to turn off our smartphones and also to put some boundaries between our real-life activities like a family dinner or going to a kid's recital or something like that, or sometimes even patient care, right, where we often have these notifications that intrude upon us, and we all need to draw some sort of boundaries to make sure that we're really mindful about what's happening day to day.
So if I'm listening to you talking today, how do I evaluate my own behavior according to that?
Well, interestingly, I think a lot of smartphones have started to give you a weekly report about your time on screen, which is just one measure. I think the other piece that often happens is a loved one, a child, a peer, a colleague might say, you're on your phone a lot, Howard or Stephen, and maybe you should spend a little bit more time here or focused. And then I think just some rules sometimes, just maybe in certain settings you don't bring your phones, right? Or you just turn off your social media, make sure you really enjoy that vacation.
Sure. Do you think adolescents are more at risk here than other parts of the demographic?
I think that adolescents and youth as well, younger kids, are more at risk, and increasingly they're getting phones at younger ages as well, often with very little guidance from their parents. And I think that is a risk because they're just learning to navigate their own social skills, defining their identities, and they have a little bit of a risk tolerance issue as well at times. And so some of those things can compound, kind of like learning to drive, where it can be a little bit dangerous at times.
So how do you guide young people through that?
Driving is a good metaphor. Even though driving can be hazardous, for most of us day to day, it's a fairly safe activity if you observe the rules of the road. And I think that what parents can do, therapists, psychiatrists as well, is to try to model the kind of behavior that you're trying to have them emulate. And so that means that, trying to be professional online, trying to put limits on your own behavior as well. And then when you do mess up, owning it as well and trying to show that you've learned from that activity.
Let me pick up on that point just a tiny bit if I could. So how can psychiatrists promote digital wellness?
Well, in a clinical sense, I think psychiatrists should be online on social media platforms, which sometimes can seem a little bit risky for many physicians and psychiatrists. But I think that there's a lot of misinformation, particularly about mental health. And I think that psychiatrists can be accessible, and just make sure they're sharing good information on all the social media platforms, but particularly the ones where the youth are.
Like what?
So the youth tend to be on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, some of the more short video-based platforms. And I think there's not many psychiatrists on those, and some of those who are there are really creative early adapters, and we would like to see more of that from the APA.
Well, Howard, thanks ever so much indeed for joining us today. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephen.